The name of the presentation changed a bit, but basically what we're going to talk about today is what security problems we are seeing in generally in Web3 products and in blockchain products. Go through some of the bigger attacks and see how you can learn when you're building products on how to actually not do those mistakes and not get hacked. So I'm basically, first of all, a hacker. Then I'm a developer. I learned to develop to be able to hack. And I'm the CTO of FYEO, and at FYEO we've done code reviews for a lot of the large blockchain projects, including XRP, but also other, like, if you think of a big project that's like post-Bitcoin, we've been involved in doing security audits or threat models or something on the large majority of the chains, especially Ethereum, etc., in these larger ecosystems. So what I'm trying to do here today is to share with you, like, what's the most common problems that we see, how do people get hacked, why do people lose all their money, so you don't have to lose all your money. So that's what I'm trying to do. My background into this, as I said already, is the hacking background. I started out in this space with hacking long before blockchain, got involved in Bitcoin, found some vulnerabilities in Bitcoin wallets, which made it possible for me to drain all the funds. But this was when Bitcoin was like $5 and no one cared, right? Because I couldn't buy anything with it, so I just reported it to the right people. And really, basically what I'm interested in the future of the space, I think the decentralized identity that we touched a bit upon in the previous talk is going to be really interesting, and I'm hoping that we'll see a move away from just decentralized financials into actually decentralized identities, where your private key can be used as a tool to actually prove your identity. So about FYEO, we actually done more than 300 code audits and project audits in the blockchain space since we started. We're specializing in code audits, threat models of projects, and see what threats there, etc. And we're also launching CryptPass, which is a decentralized password manager, and also breach notification, because as we're going to see in these slides, the majority of the loss of funds are due to poor password management and poor key management. So we're launching FYEO, or FYEO is launching CryptPass right now. There will be a QR code at the end of the slides where you can download them. So when we're talking about attacks in Web3, how many of you have heard about like layer 1 attacks and layer 3 attacks, etc.? It's like, yeah, there's all these layers, and it's highly confusing because no one knows what these layers are. I'm just going to define them for this talk as layer 1 being like the generalized network attacks, and then I'm not talking about the blockchain network, I'm talking about the TCP/IP internet layer attacks. And then we have the node attacks and the wallet attacks, and we're going to call them, for the sake of argument, the L1 attacks. And then we have the layer 2, which we'd like to define as smart contracts. When I was doing research for this, if you ask ChatGPT, we're talking about he has made up various layers and models. It's very confusing. Also, the Wikipedia articles on this subject is very, we should have like some sort of, I don't know, working group that actually decides what the layers is of a blockchain, because it's highly confusing. We're going to look at these, but then also we're going to look at the majority of the attacks, which is the user attacks, because I would say like 75% of the real attacks where people are, we actually had a client today which we audited. I'm not going to name any names, obviously, but it's like, hey, we had a guy and they just drained this amount of millions, and we're like, okay, we're quite sure that it isn't a problem of the code, and it most likely is a user that's got his wallet drained because of password reuse, poor management, or poor key management. Because 90% of all this, and this can very negatively affect a project. Because if you think your project, xyz.com, if you get one of these articles, 400 million drained from xyz.com, they don't care if it was a stupid user that had a bad wallet password or saved his private key on a laptop that got stolen. It's still going to affect your project, if that makes sense. So it's very important to decide to design your projects with these stupid users in mind. So yeah, starting with the layer 0 attacks. This is a very famous meme from the old days of the internet. It's not DNS. There is no way it's DNS. It was DNS. It's always DNS. It's like a famous haiku, because the DNS system that powers everything. Everyone implicitly trusts DNS because we take it for granted, same as air and water, and like DNS is just there. And if you can spoof the DNS messages, you can take over the servers in the middle. So let's take XRP as an example. You have the UNL list, right? What happens if you spoof the DNS servers and repoints to another UNL list? Well, then you get your Sun wallet to connect to someone else's server, and you have what's called a man in the middle. So DNS is a big attack vector in a lot of the stuff that we've seen. And it's old, encrypted, runs on UDP, have zero security. It does, on the blockchain layer, we have like transaction signing and stuff. There's no signatures, there's no nothing. There's a UDP package where you can just flip a bit and redirect the entire traffic to your server. Then we have encryption attacks, and this is one of my biggest, when we do threat models early in projects, and people are like, no, but we're not going to use that. We're using this much better crypto ourselves. And I worked with crypto analysis for both military before and for banks and large organizations. Writing your own crypto is really, really hard. There is now like vulnerabilities in OpenSSL that's like 20 years old. They are still finding new vulnerabilities in these big crypto installations. But they are more proven than rolling your own crypto. So don't roll your own crypto, that's one thing. I mean, TLS, we are still, there is like a saying, if you're part of the TLS zero-day club, it's like Fight Club. You don't talk about the TLS zero vulnerabilities. And TLS is transport layer security. That's like HTTPS. There is still today 0 days floating around, which everyone knows, sort of knows about, or there's rumors about. And there's always at least one, but you don't talk about it. And this means that there are always going to be man-in-the-middle attacks and proxies. So if we're looking at a lot of the attacks in the Web3 space, are based on man-in-the-middle attacks, either against the networks or against the users. And also we have, on the larger scale, on the political scale, especially with the war against Ukraine, Russia is hacking the BGP router tables, redirecting in certain countries to go route via other certain countries so they can sniff the data. And this we're starting to see in Web3 attacks as well, especially with North Korea and other players doing these attacks, because there is so much money in Web3 space now that it's actually getting worth for some of these nation-state sponsored actors to actually do BGP routing attacks. Yeah, and a great example attacking the XRP network would be to reroute some of the data for the UNL, so everyone connects to a new untrusted UNL list of servers and take over the network. So this image, I'm talking about these man-in-the-middle attacks, so I'm just going to explain basically what it is. So on either side you have the poor user, and then you have the website or the server or the node that you're trying to connect to with your wallet or your browser. You have one TLS connection, and then we place ourselves in the middle here as the evil hacker. And we have one encryption layer there. We decrypt everything so we can see it in the middle. Then we re-encrypt it. And basically, if you're doing a Bitcoin transaction, here in the middle, we just change the to address. We re-encrypt everything to the original node, and boom, we got the money. Easy. So looking at the more layer 1 attacks on the actual blockchain layer, what we're seeing most of here is DDoS attacks is very common. And DDoS attack is common for one reason, or for several reasons. It could be another network, like to take your network down. But it could also be that you can DDoS a network to make it produce less blocks, because if you DDoS a network, it will stall the production of blocks. So let's say an XRP example, well, we have the automated market maker, and it measures the time at the price of a certain block height, right? So if it doesn't produce a block, I can do more orders at the last price. So if I do like, it's like moving shares, and then we stop the music. And if I stop the music extra long, I can keep on dancing and place more orders. And then when everyone kicks on again, my orders will be fulfilled at an old price. So that's one thing. One of the things that we also see is recursive contracts. On the XRP, it's good that we don't have recursive contracts. Okay, now something went very fast. That was interesting.
It's an attack.
Bluetooth attacks. Man in the middle on the Bluetooth stuff. Let's see if I can get this. I think I've moved to my computer and get this. That was fast. Now we're back. So on the layer 2 side, which is the smart contract side, and when it comes to XRP, we don't really have, or we have 2 side chains with smart contracts, which we're hoping will get to main chain fairly soon. But the biggest thing that we see with smart contracts, and I put smart contracts in quotes because they're not smart and they're not contracts. Legally, it's been proven that smart contracts are not contracts from a legal standpoint, because there is no KYC, so you can't have them as legal contract. And based on all the attacks that we've seen, they're definitely not smart. So I would like to call them unsmart contracts. But basically what they are is robots. A better way to understand smart contracts is call them transaction robots. So it comes in, it looks at a transaction, say if this, then that, and then they execute something based on that transaction, splits the money or does whatever. So basically, they're living on chain, and they're moving transactions. They're splitting transactions, or do something with the transaction, and creates new transactions. So a better term would probably be like transaction robots. And the biggest attack here is what's called a reentrancy attack. And to understand a reentrancy attack is basically it's a robot calling another robot. What could possibly go wrong without human intervention, right? So let's say that we have robot A. I think there's another slide on the reentrancy attack. And then we have drain attacks. And reentrancy attacks can lead to drain attacks. Like, because you've all seen these like 400 drains from this wallet or this DEX or whatever. How do they do it? Well, the contracts are not this, they're designed to function like if this, then that. But if you can inject another party or call the contract in another way or make the contract call itself, you can like execute the same transaction over and over again. And that's where the reentrancy attacks become drain attacks. So we'll look at an example of that. So the reentrancy attack, and by the way, this is ChatGPT generated, the images. I just asked it to. Basically, it's when one contract calls another contract without first storing its state. So it's like, hey, I want to withdraw $200. And you say, yeah, okay, I'll send the $200. And before you stored the state that you actually have withdrawn $200. So it would be as the ATM, you put in your PIN, and before you just check, does this user have $200? Okay, I'll send him in $200. And instead of taking the money out, you just hold them there so it doesn't save the state. And then you ask again, can I have $200? Yeah, he still has $200 on the blockchain, so I'll give him $200. And then you have $400, but you still don't take them out. 800, $1,000. So this is the like drain reentrancy attack. And this is like in 80% of all the layer 2 attacks that we're seeing, this is what's causing it. So one of the largest and most well-known attacks, and this is the DAO attack, where someone used a reentrancy attack to get 3.6 million ETH. I'm not sure what an ETH is worth today, but as you can guess, it's quite a lot of money. And basically, just as a fun fact, this actually led to a split in the entire Ethereum ecosystem, because so much money was lost from so many investors in the DAO that the board of ETH were like, guys, we need to give this money back. We can't have, our investors are not going to like that like 3.6 million ETH just got hacked. So they actually forked, they did a hard fork of the network, so because there was so much negative publicity, not just against the DAO, but as Ethereum as layer 1, because of this attack, that actually hard forked. And that's what, actually this attack is what caused Ethereum Classic. Because some of the minters, they were like, nope, no. So that's actually led to a hard fork in the ETH chain. So basically, it involves the vulnerable contract making external calls without updating the balance in its own contract. So making the calls before it has written to the next block. So to protect this, smart contracts can use like reentrancy guards that ensure that the contract cannot be called again before the initial receipt has been written on chain, basically. So this would be like the bank put in temporary hold while the withdrawal is in process. You need to do this, otherwise you're vulnerable against these types of attacks. And then we have the layer 3 attacks, the losers that we used to call them, because these are the guys that are losing their funds. The vast majority of attacks in Web3 is targeting the users. Especially when we're doing it, since we're quite public, with the audits that we're doing, and our emails end up in a lot of reports and stuff, we get so many like text messages and phishing messages and email messages that it's actually quite interesting. Most of our family and friends, my parents are starting to get like phishing messages because I'm known in the Web3 space of doing security work. Like, Thomas, I'm getting these really weird text messages. It's like, yeah, because someone Googled and you're related to me. So people are trying to hack my parents to get access to information about me and accounts so that they can get to my clients. And this is how weird the world is going. But according to Verizon does a yearly, like, they ask all the CISOs of big companies, like, have you had a data breach this year? Yes, what was the root cause, etc. And 60% of all data breaches that led to financial loss worldwide includes passwords, leaked passwords. An additional 16% involves password reuse from third parties or brute force attacks of weak passwords. And this is same stuff in Web3 as in Web2. So basically what this leads to is 80% of all cyber breaches, and this is same for Web3, stem from weak passwords, putting personal data at risk. And most of these attacks that we're going to look at has this involved in somehow. So at FYEO, we thought about this. Okay, we're doing all these code audits and we're secured against re-entry attack, but what can we more do to protect? So that's why we're releasing CryptPass, the password manager, which we're going to go in more to. So we have a database we do the same thing that the bad guys are doing. We go on dark web and we look at the torrent files and we download the torrent files, we index them, we crack the passwords, and this is the most common password. And this is actually funny. This was the most common password throughout history. Can you guess which the most common password is this year? Yeah? Hello, 1, 2, 3. No, but it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's today the most common password of the last year. So it has improved slightly. I mean, we have 3 more characters because the site forces us to have a few more characters, but it's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is a really bad password. QWERTY 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 1, 1. So you see, people are inherently lazy because if you make a too complex password, you will forget it. So people do the simplest thing you can. And unfortunately, that's how it works. So all your passwords belong to us. We have indexed, and this is an example of a data breach. I think this is the Adobe breach. So basically, we download from either darknet or these trading sites that are on darknet, where you're like, hey, can I have, where hackers that have hacked other sites dump them. They're called dumps. So we download the dumps, and we index them in the database, and this is how it looks. So you have, we're taking away the username, but like yahoo.com, a password hash, and these hashes we crack. And some people also, you can have like password reminders. People actually input, like my password is Dream 1983, in case you were to forget it. So stored by the encrypted hash. So it's quite easy for us to crack these passwords. So out of the 28 billion passwords that we created, how many humans were we in the world again?
Less than 8.
Yeah. So that means that we have more than 6 passwords per user on Earth. And we cracked 5 of them. So for everyone in this room, we have your password on average 5 times in our database in clear text. And so does the bad guys. And then people get really like, oh, how did I get hacked? It's like, I don't know. So that's the other thing that's happened lately with these big attacks is like, you get this annoying thing, right, from Google. It's like, you need to input your phone number. So the hackers aren't far behind. We've seen account takeovers, phishing, smishing attacks, where people are bypassing 2FA, and I actually did a talk on Black Hat last year where we tried the same thing as the attackers and actually bypassed Google's 2FA live on stage. We did ask Google for permission to show this live, and they nicely gave it us. But so we wanted to research how they did do this, and what the attack vectors are, and what was needed. And we could reproduce it quite easily. Bypassing 2FA, if you have already enough information, which is your username, your password, and your phone number, the actual text messages that you get on your phones. This system was invented by Ericsson, the switchboard manufacturer, telephone manufacturer, back in the 80s, and it's still the same system. There's like same as DNS. There's no security, there's no signatures, there's no reference. You can just put any data out there, and it will be trusted. And the phone will autofill it in the form for you. So it's super easy to spoof. So an example of this is like Crypto.com got hacked, and half of their users got their wallet drains. And this was a SMS phishing, smishing attacks. And smishing is basically very hard. I mean, it is technically impossible to verify a text message. So when you're designing a product, don't rely on text messages for 2FA. The option that we recommend to all our builders, where we're doing audits and threat models, is use TOTP. It's this annoying stuff, you know, like you see this like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. That's an open standard which is time-based, which is much harder to actually hack. And I realize we have a lot of slides and not so much time. So basically, to summarize this, you can say that when we talked about user credentials, we thought that we just usernames and password. But today, we're actually talking about usernames, password, telephone numbers, and TOTP tokens. If we have those, we can still hack you. You're still as hackable. So instead, so why is it that we only encrypt the passwords when we're saving the password? Why don't we encrypt the phone numbers and TOTP tokens? But people don't, because we're not there. So we have a great start for simulating attack with our 28 billion passwords. We can also tie roughly 1 in 10 telephone numbers to these patterns. So I'm going to skip some of these attacks, although they're interesting. We're sort of out of time, I think. But just to show you how normally this is done, the most popular 2FA bypass still that's been successful in this is like on your Crypto.com or your choice of exchange. You do a password reset, and then you SMS inject the initiated with 2FA enabled, and you send them the message, which is like, oh my God, your bit something account is under attack. Enter this code, or click this link to enter this code. And most of the people will actually do this. SIM jacking is something that happens in the States still, and that's more of like social engineering, getting people to change your phone number by changing operator. And this was a thing that happens a lot. Most people still say that SIM jacking is the cause because they don't want to sound stupid. So a lot of the stuff we've actually done post-mortems of attacks, people say, no, I got SIM jacked. It's like, no, you didn't get SIM jacked. You had a really bad password and your credential data and your 2FA, and you click the 2FA link. That's more likely to happen, but people are still saying that they get SIM jacked. It's getting rarer and rarer. However, account recovery is still, this is what happens if I am not myself. This is my personal email. This is what happens if it's how much data I get from Google if I'm not myself and trying to do a password reset on me. I see a lot of other email addresses, which I can double check against LinkedIn. I get a partial of my phone number. And together with other public data, you can get quite a lot of this data. And of course, then I can then start hacking those other email addresses associated with my account, which might be using a weaker password than my work email, right? So that's how the hacker works. Again, smishing is basically teaching old phones to do new tricks. You can still get old Nokia, well, maybe it's not working anymore, but manually via your phone, and you can send this through API services. There's both like SendGrid and well-known services. There's also Chinese and Russian services that are not very, they don't care what you send to the US or Europe. And you can buy on AliExpress one of these like bulk senders, which you like put in just a lot of SIM cards, and you can send thousands and thousands of text messages which are spoofed. And these actually come pre-built without any protection against who you're sending it from. So my colleague used to send text messages from the police in Sweden to his friends when we were testing this before Black Hat, and some of his friends got really, really angry. And people do trust these text messages. If they come from the police, people do tend to trust them because they come from the police. And in the US, you have this like warning system. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, Amber Alert. And you can just say Amber Alert in your text message and send it off, and people are, oh my God, we're getting nuked. So yeah, that's and all this research data that we did, we actually have released in a file. So it's hashed, so we don't give away everyone's passwords. That'd be bad. So we still haven't. We're not releasing your cracked passwords, but we're giving away all the hashes and all your phone numbers. So you can see if you're still there. So key takeaways from this: most attacks on Web3 are based on leaked credentials. Re-entrancy attacks are the top issues in smart contracts. 1 in 5 emails or login account can be tied to valid phone numbers. And basically, what we want you to do is threat models. This is what we're trying to get everyone to do. Like, who will hack you? What are you trying to protect? Against whom do you want to protect it? Who are the likely people that are going to attack you? And what's the most likely pattern they're going to use to attack your product and system? And what will happen if they succeed? If you've done this, you have something that we call a threat model, and then you're much easier for you to, when they call you in the middle of the night, oh my God, we've been hacked. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I know, it's the Joker. He probably hacked the system and got to Alfred. At least that will give you a bit of early warning and know what to do. So last of all, join the CryptPass beta. We're launching it. We're in the App Store's review process right now. We really hope to have it live now. It's a Chrome extension. It's for Android and for iOS, with peer-to-peer sync of your password data, so you don't need to get hacked like this and end up in our database. And also you get access to our breach notification if you end up in someone else's database. So it's a cross-device password manager, which is based on private key cryptography. Thank you very much.